For 24 years, Judge Meredith Langford ruled the Jefferson County Courthouse in Birmingham, Alabama, with an iron fist. Attorneys feared her. Defendants knew they didn't stand a chance. Her courtroom was a place where justice was twisted, where lives were destroyed, and where the unspoken truth of her corruption lingered in the air like a heavy fog. But today, that would change. Darnell Hayes stepped into the courtroom, his polished shoes clicking against the marble floor. At 48, Darnell had built a reputation as a defense attorney who took the cases no one else wanted. He was known for his sharp mind, his relentless pursuit of justice, and his ability to dismantle even the strongest prosecution. Today, he wasn't just here to defend his client, Tyrone Wilkes, a black man falsely accused of armed robbery. He was here to expose the rot at the heart of the system. Judge Langford sat on the bench, her sharp eyes cutting through the room like a blade. She rarely looked over her reading glasses, and when she spoke, her measured tone carried an authority that crushed anyone who dared push back. For 24 years, she had ruled with impunity, her bias and corruption hidden behind the veneer of judicial power. Darnell felt the weight of the moment as he approached the defense table. This wasn't just about Tyrone. This was about every case Langford had ever manipulated, every life she had ruined. "Mr. Hayes," Langford said, barely glancing up from her paperwork, "you're already on thin ice in my courtroom. Don't waste my time today." Darnell tightened his grip on his briefcase but kept his expression neutral. "I'll try not to, Your Honor." Langford smirked. "Good, because I have a full docket and I don't need theatrics." The trial began, and it quickly became clear that this wasn't a trial. It was a performance. Langford dismissed every objection Darnell raised, guiding the young prosecutor, Philip Calloway, through his stumbling arguments like a teacher correcting a favorite student. The jury noticed. The gallery noticed. But no one dared speak up. Darnell, however, wasn't intimidated. He had spent years preparing for this moment. He studied Langford, the way her lips curled when she spoke to him, the way she barely concealed her contempt. It wasn't just bias. It was something deeper, something uglier. "Mr. Hayes," Langford snapped after one of his objections, "you're testing my patience." "Your Honor," Darnell replied calmly, "the prosecution just introduced evidence that was not disclosed in discovery. That's a clear violation of Brady versus Maryland Starr. I move for an immediate mistrial." Langford leaned back in her chair, adjusting her glasses with exaggerated boredom. "Denied." Darnell didn't flinch. "To be clear, Your Honor, you're refusing to acknowledge a Brady violation?" Langford's lips twitched. "I said denied, Mr. Hayes." The courtroom shifted. Reporters scribbled furiously. The gallery whispered. Langford's eyes darkened as she glared at Darnell. "You are dangerously close to being held in contempt, Mr. Hayes." Darnell tilted his head slightly. "For what, Your Honor? Asking the court to follow the law?" Langford slammed her gavel. "That's enough. One more word, and I'll have you removed." The room fell silent. Darnell sat down, his expression unreadable. He knew the game wasn't over. In fact, it had just begun. As the trial dragged on, Langford's bias became impossible to ignore. She cut Darnell off at every turn, dismissing his arguments and favoring the prosecution. But Darnell didn't back down. He had a plan, and he was waiting for the right moment to execute it. That moment came when the prosecution called their key witness, a shaky-eyed store clerk who claimed to have seen Tyrone at the scene of the robbery. "Mr. Thomas," Calloway asked, "can you confirm that the defendant, Tyrone Wilkes, was the man you saw at the scene of the robbery?" The witness hesitated. I think so." Darnell stood immediately. "Objection, Your Honor. That is not a definitive statement." Langford didn't hesitate. "Overruled." Darnell exhaled slowly, shaking his head just enough for the jury to notice. He approached the witness stand for cross-examination. "Mr. Thomas," he began, his voice steady, "you said you think you saw my client that night. How sure are you?" The man licked his lips. "I mean, I thought I saw him, but—" Langford cut him off. "Move on, Mr. Hayes." Darnell turned to face her. "I'd like the witness to answer, Your Honor." "I said move on." Darnell didn't blink. "For the record, Your Honor, you are preventing the witness from clarifying his own statement." Langford's face twitched. "I'm warning you, Mr. Hayes." Darnell smiled slightly. "I understand, Your Honor." He turned back to the witness. "No further questions." As he returned to his seat, Darnell could feel the tension in the room shifting. Langford had lost control, and she knew it. But Darnell wasn't done. He reached into his briefcase, his fingers brushing against the stack of documents that would change everything. And just as he did, the courtroom doors swung open. 2 federal agents strode in, their movements crisp and purposeful. The room fell silent. "Judge Meredith Langford," one of the agents said, flashing a badge. "We need to speak with you immediately." Langford's jaw tightened. "I am in the middle of a trial." The agent didn't budge. "It's urgent." Darnell watched as Langford's mask of composure began to crack. She squared her shoulders. "This is highly inappropriate. Whatever this is, it will have to wait." The second agent stepped forward. "This is a matter of federal interest. It cannot wait." A ripple of whispers spread through the gallery. Langford's eyes flickered with fear. Darnell stood. "Your Honor," he said, his voice calm, "I believe you just denied my motion for a mistrial. But it seems this trial is now the least of your concerns." The lead agent pulled a folded sheet of paper from his jacket. "Meredith Langford, you are being arrested under suspicion of bribery, abuse of power, obstruction of justice, and violation of civil rights under federal law." The room erupted. Reporters scrambled to capture every detail. The jury sat frozen, their eyes darting between Darnell and Langford. Langford turned to Darnell, her voice trembling with rage. This is your doing." Darnell met her gaze. "This is justice." The agents moved to the bench. "Judge, we need you to stand." For a moment, Langford didn't move. Then, slowly, she rose to her feet. The click of the handcuffs echoed through the courtroom. Langford, once the most powerful person in the room, was now just another defendant. As the agents led her away, Darnell turned to the replacement judge who had been rushed in to take over. "Your Honor," he said, "given the recent developments, I move for an immediate dismissal of all charges against my client." The new judge, an older black man with a reputation for fairness, nodded. "I agree. The charges against Tyrone Wilkes are dismissed. Bailiff, remove his restraints." Tyrone let out a breath he had been holding for years. As the handcuffs came off, he turned to Darnell, his eyes filled with gratitude. "I don't even know what to say," Tyrone muttered. Darnell clapped a hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to say anything." Because today, justice had been served, not because the system worked, but because someone had fought to make it work. As Darnell walked out of the courtroom, he knew this was just the beginning. There were more Langfords out there, more battles to fight, and he wasn't done yet.